Hello and welcome back to another episode of Planetary Weather, Volume 9. First it swallows the sun, then we feed it milk. The Serpent Festival at the heart of the eclipse corridor. And we're talking about Naga Panchami, the festival of the Nagas on the 17th of August 2026. This is part 2 of my 3-part Snakes and Shadows series. Namaste and welcome, Jyotish followers. Change of scenery. I'm in my grotto because I live under the roofs in Paris. We have the 5th heat wave and it gets quite unbearable. So let's get rolling. Last video I told you that the old stories about eclipses had cast the wrong suspect, that it was not the serpent's head that would take in the sun, but the tail, Ketu, Cauda Draconis, and that it would happen in Ashlesha, the star of the serpent itself. Well, the tail has taken the sun, and now we're in the corridor between solar and lunar eclipse. The corridor is open, and the chamber of secrets is open, and now something is happening in that corridor, and it perfectly fits the theme. So on the 17th of August, many people across India will walk to rivers, anthills, to the old trees besides the temples and villages, carrying bowls of milk and water. They're going to feed the snakes. Naga Panchami, the festival of the Naga, the mystical serpents. And this year it sits exactly in the middle of the eclipse corridor. Reminds me of the image of a snake trapped inside a bamboo pipe. It can only go in 2 directions, up or down. Which one will it be? So today I want to explore why snakes own this eclipse season. I will look at 2 of the many great serpent stories of India. One that is at the foundation of the festival, and one that gave the cobra a snake, the footprint of a god. I will also introduce you to the court of the serpent kings, and then we will open your chart. There's a classical diagnosis called Sarpa Badhaka, the obstruction of the serpents, and you can check it in your own chart with nothing but your ascendant and the table I'm gonna give you. And if your chart turns out to be clean, don't relax too early. Snakes being Slytherin, there are other doors that open for them to influence and impact us anyways. I will talk about these 2. And at the end, as always, we will look at the remedies and at what my tradition asks you to do with this one particular day, that is Naga Panchami. Let's roll. So if you look at the architecture of this fortnight, the dates themselves will tell the story already. On the 12th of August, to the left, the total solar eclipse crossed part of Europe. It was just yesterday evening by the time I'm recording this. Sun and moon meeting in Ashlesha, the serpent star, in the last portion of Cancer. On the 28th of August, in the early morning hours then, a lunar eclipse will close the fortnight. The full moon standing in Shatabhishak, the nakshatra ruled by Rahu, in Aquarius, under Varuna, lord of the cosmic waters. And the corridor opens in the Naga's own star, Ashlesha, and closes in the serpent's head's own nakshatra, Shatabhishak. It enters through the snake and it exits through the snake, so to speak. And in the exact middle of the passage, on the 17th, sits Naga Panchami, the festival of the serpent beings. It happens in the belly of the cosmic, the sun and moon eating snake. Isn't that poetic? One more thing stands in the sky. Ketu, the tail that took the sun yesterday in the eclipse. He's the Karaka, the significator of ancestry and of everything that we inherit without asking. And he's moving through the nakshatra of Maga, the star of the ancestors, the Pitris, the ancestral fathers, and that star is ruled by Ketu himself, so he's in his own nakshatra. It really is all connected here. So who are the Naga actually? Well, before any of this makes sense, we have to clear away the postcard version. In the West, Naga Panchami is usually filed under exotic folklore. Look, mummy, they're worshipping snakes. That is not what is happening at all. In the Indian tradition, the Nagas are not animals. They are an order of beings. They are keepers. They are keepers of a very specific portfolio: water, the underground, hidden knowledge, fertility of the land, prosperity, even the rains. Where water rises out of the earth, where knowledge rises out of the invisible, the tradition says that threshold has a guardian, and the guardian wears the form of a serpent. And that is not an Indian eccentricity. The serpent that guards treasure, water, and forbidden knowledge appears in Mesopotamia, in Greece, in the Norse world, in China, and in the Americas. A century ago, and this is my main reference that I used for this video. Can you see this? A Dutch scholar called Vogel, Indian serpent lore. He collected Indian material in the standard academic work on serpent lore. Serpent kings under rivers, serpent shrines under trees, whole royal houses claiming a Naga as the founder of their line. And three things keep coming back in the old sources, and they draw the serpent's job description with surprising precision. First, they hold the treasure. Buddhist texts name 4 great treasures of ancient India and set a Naga king over each one as its guardian. In Kashmir's royal chronicle, a physician grows rich through the favor of Takshaka, the serpent king, and Vogel notes dryly that serpents as guardians and givers of wealth are a belief found all over the world. Secondly, the Nagas, the serpents, they often stand behind healers. The serpent king Karkotaka pulls a physician into his underwater palace to treat the eyes of his queen and grants that the man's descendants will excel as oculists. At Rajagriha, the water of the Maninagas shrine made snake venom powerless, it is said. So the being whose bite kills is the same being whose favor cures. The venom is also medicine. You can see a link to medicine, but also to alchemy here. You have heard that phrase in my series before. It is a phrase connected to Ashlesha. Thirdly, Nagas as founder of family lines. The most illustrious dynasty of Kashmir, the house that built the Martan Sun Temple, boasted that the Naga Karkotaka was a procreator of their race. So serpent and lineage, snake and ancestry, they're all woven together on the level of royal blood. And even political power sat on the serpent. The famous iron pillar of Delhi was believed to rest its foot on the head of the serpent king himself, securing the kingdom. And it is said that once a skeptical ruler had it dug up, and the base was found wet with the serpent's blood. But the pillar could never be fixed again, and the kingdom fell shortly after. Whatever you think happened there, the belief itself tells you what the serpent means and meant, the thing your stability secretly rests on. And that is true in the big and in the small universe. And then there's one more trait, for me it's the strangest one. The Nagas can bind people to places. It is said that when a spiritually developed or open person lives long enough near water, a spring, a river, a harbor, a bond forms, whether you ask for it or not. The Nagas do not release what they consider theirs until the conditions are right. I know how this sounds. I know it also from the inside, because once I lived here. For 13 years I lived in Ireland, and the last 6 years I lived on top of that place, a very mythical hill, the Head of Howth in Dublin Bay. I was blessed to live in a house where I could see the Irish Sea from my upper floor windows. I was brushing my teeth, having basically this look here. The Head of Howth figures in ancient Irish mythology, and it is said that the Tuatha De Danann guard a treasure there. It is also a port town. It's a place where water, earth, and wind eternally meet. I am on diverse spiritual path for over 33 years now, and of course I practice stuff also there. Also things connected to the elemental spirits of the Western tradition. While living there in Howth, I was not aware of Naga lore yet at that time. My Jyotish journey began shortly after that. What I can say is that leaving Howth and Ireland came with strange obstacles. Here's another shot I took while landing. This is the Head of Howth and Howth Harbor. They manifested as work situations that were unclear, and in the end, my partner and cats left and went to France, but I was forced to stay put. And only when COVID became a thing, I was able to leave and rearrange my life elsewhere. And although I enjoy my new life in Paris, I'm very close to the River Seine, which is enough waterway to have its own set of Naga. I feel sometimes a deep longing to return to Howth every once and so often. But back to the Nagas. What decides whether the Nagas bless or punish? Well, the old answer is uncomfortable in the best way. It depends on how nature is treated by you or was treated by your ancestors. Not in the abstract sense, but concretely. Their water, their trees, their ground. So in a few minutes when we're going to open your chart, that is exactly the condition we will search for. Do you have a Sarpa Badhaka? Was there a sin against nature in your family line? But before we open your chart, story time. There are two Naga stories I want to share with you, and these are basically the two poles of the whole theology behind Naga Panchami. The first one explains why the festival exists at all, and it begins with a curse spoken inside a family. So let's start with it. A long time ago, in a land far away, Kadru, the mother of the 1,000 serpents, asked her sons to do something dishonest for her. To hang as fake black hairs in the tail of the sacred white horse Uchai-Shrayas, so she can win a wager against her sister, one she already had lost, unless she could make the white tail of the horse appear black. Some of her sons, or one of her sons in one iteration, refused because her basic motivation was wrong, ruling over her sister, and it was based on a lie. And Kadru, their own mother, cursed them for it, that a fire may consume them in a serpent sacrifice conducted by a king not even yet born. Generations later, that curse became true. King Parikshit insulted a meditating sage, and the hot-headed son of the sage cursed the king in return, so he may die by the bite of the serpent king Takshaka within 7 days. And Takshata kept the appointment, hidden as a worm inside a fruit, on the last evening in a palace built on a single pillar above the water. So the king was bitten and he died. The king's son, Janamejaya, inherited the throne and the rage, and he ordered the Sarpa Satra, the great serpent sacrifice, a fire ritual built to pull every serpent in creation out of their hiding and thrust them into the flames. And it worked. The serpents rained into the fire by the thousands. It is, if you want, the first extermination program in world literature, and its target are the keepers of the waters. Now the serpents held a council, and the answer to the fire, when it comes, was not a weapon, it was a marriage. The great serpent king Vasuki gives his sister Jaratkaru to a wandering ascetic of the same name, a man who had sworn never to marry, until the day he saw his own ancestors hanging head down over a precipice, doomed because his line was ending with him. Only a son of that impossible marriage, half ascetic, half serpent, can stop what is coming. And here is what the myth just did. The ancestors are saved by an alliance with the serpents. The serpents are saved by the child of that alliance. The ancestors, the Pitris and the Nagas, ancestry and serpents, rescued by one and the same marriage. If you paid attention during my solar eclipse video, you might remember that this eclipse is also the marriage of the ancestors, because Ketu is in Maga, and of the Nagas, because Sun and Moon are in Ashlesha. Now that child that's gonna save the day, not the boy who lived, but the boy who stopped the killing, was called Astika. He walks into Janamejaya's sacrifice as a young boy. He praises the rite so beautifully that the king offers him any gift he names. And the boy says, "Stop. Stop the sacrifice. Let the serpents live." And because a king's word once given binds him, the fire goes out with Takshaka literally hanging in the air above it. So the day the burning stopped is the day celebrated as Naga Panchami, an amnesty day if you want. Not the day the serpents were defeated, the day we stopped burning them. Now the second story, you might also know it. It's also one of the core stories about Nagas. In the Yamuna river of Lord Krishna's childhood, there was a lake where the serpent king Kalia had settled, a serpent with 5 hoods in the oldest tellings. His poison was so strong that the water itself boiled. Birds flying over the lake fell dead out of the air. The trees on the banks had died. One afternoon, the cowherd boys and the cows drank the water and collapsed. And Krishna, who is at this point a boy, a cowherd child with dust on his feet, he looks at the poisoned commons of his people, and the old texts give his reason in almost environmental language. This river must be made wholesome again, so that the people and the cattle of Braj can drink. And then he climbs a kadamba tree and jumps in. Kalia bites him on the chest and wraps him in coils, and the whole village stands on the bank and despairs. Then the boy begins to expand. The serpent cannot hold him and lets go. And what happens next is not a battle, it is a dance. Lord Krishna climbs onto the hoods and dances, and the texts say he became heavy with the weight of the universe. Every hood that rose pressed down again, one by one, in rhythm, until the serpent was exhausted and bleeding and beating. And here the story becomes theology. Kaliya's wives rise from the water with their children and plead for his life. And Krishna grants it. He does not kill the serpent. He sends him home to the island he had fled because Garuda, this great serpent-eating eagle, hunted there. And when Kaliya objects that Garuda will devour him and his family, Krishna answers, no, he will not. You now carry the marks of my feet on your heads. And Garuda will never touch what bears my footprint. And so, the mark of his defeat is the mark of his protection. The same feet that broke him are the passport that guarantees his life. And to this day, that is how Kaliya is painted. Hoods spread, and on the hoods, footprints. The dance even has a name, Kaliya Daman, the taming of Kaliya, not the killing. The serpent is not destroyed. The serpent is danced with, marked, and released into right relationship. That is the entire logic of this festival, and it happens in one image. And at Mathura, they still show you the spot. It is called Kalimardan Ghat, and the festival procession of boats reenacts the dance on the water. The myth has an address. So by now, you have met some of the Nagas already in the story. It's time to show you the whole court, because on Naga Panchami, the tradition does not address snakes in general. It addresses the 9 serpent kings. Where does this court come from? Well, the oldest layer is the Mahabharata itself, whose first book unrolls long catalogues of the divine serpents born of Kadru. Early Buddhist texts already know 4 great Naga kings presiding over the 4 quarters of the sky, and 4 Naga guardians set over the 4 great treasures of India. Later, the temple traditions consolidate a canonical set, a pre-7th century text. The Shiva Dharma Shastra lists 8 lords of the serpents, with their own iconography, the Ashtanaga. And the set most alive in practice today is the one recited on this very festival, the Nava Naga Stotra, the prayer of the 9 serpent names. Whoever recites these 9 names, the verse promises, has no fear of poison. And we can look at the 9 names. Well, here's first the Stotram. If you want to use it, you can make a screenshot, or you can look it up in my Substack. It's a prayer of the 9 great serpents that is recited on Naga Panchami. And then we can also have a look over the serpents in detail. So you might need to zoom in and to pause or whatever, depending on where you're watching this. But here they are: Ananta, Vasuki, Shesha, Padmanabha, Kambala, Shankapala, Dhartarashtra, Takshaka, and Kaliya. Some of them you know already from the stories. So 9 kings, and among them you recognize the whole spectrum: the one who carries the world, the one who rules, the one who endures torture without striking, the one who killed a king, the one who was tamed and marked. So the serpent is not one thing in this tradition. It is a court, and courts contain saints and assassins at the same table. Now, you heard the stories, you met the Naga kings. Now let's lay the myth over the astronomy, and then we watch it click together. So in the tradition, an eclipse is the severed serpent catching the luminaries. The head, Rahu, or the tail, Ketu. Last week, it was the tail's turn in the serpent's own star. Ashlesha means the embrace, the entwining. In the nakshatra of the coil, penetrating, hypnotic, secret, ruled by Mercury, presided over by the Nagas themselves, the final stretch of Cancer. The venom that is also medicine. I made also a graphic here about where this is happening. So you have the zodiac, and you have Cancer, Leo, and Cancer is a water sign, Leo is a fire sign, and these crossings between water and fire, there are 3 of them in the zodiac. They're always the most critical points. So the last stretch of Cancer and the first of Leo, and if you zoom in on this Gandanta point, we call it Gandanta, you see that Sun and Moon were in Ashlesha and Ketu was in Leo in Maga. So Ashlesha very end, Cancer touches Leo, water touches fire, and this Gandanta, it's a knot, one of the knots in the zodiac, the places where the karmic thread is tied so tightly that it takes sometimes drastic things to loosen it. And standing on the other side, Ketu in Maga, the nakshatra of the ancestors, the Pitri, ruled by Ketu himself. So the tail that took the sun is standing in the ancestor's own star. In the star it rules on the far side of the knot from the wound. So this fortnight, 2 currents run through one narrow passage. The current of the serpents, nature, water, the invisible, everything our species has been taking from without asking. And the current of the ancestors, the lineage, everything we inherit without asking. And the new moon is always ancestral. A new moon in Ashlesha with Ketu in Maga across the knot is both doors open at once. You saw the same fusion in the Astika story, the marriage that saved the ancestors and the serpents in one stroke. The sky is currently telling that story in its own alphabet. The tradition would say that our civilization has been running a long experiment in breaking the serpent's blessing, and the weather reports of the last years and climate change are the lab results coming in. So Naga Panchami is the day in the middle of that corridor when both depths can be acknowledged with one gesture. And before I show you the gesture, let us find out who specifically owes. Let's open our charts. If you don't have your Vedic chart, you need to make one. And I know some of you mentioned that this is not the best site, but in general, it's one of the better ones actually, because it uses the mean nodes and not the true nodes, which is important. So you can go to prokerala.com or to any other astrology, Vedic astrology chart creator that you know that is good, that you can use. It depends a bit on your knowledge of how you read a chart. Sarpa Badhaka means obstruction by the serpents. It is one of the classical categories of invisible obstacles. It's one of the obstacles that Parashara himself barely mentions, but the Prashnamarga, the great South Indian text on subtle afflictions, spells it out in detail. So before you reach for your chart, one thing, clearly, this is not a curse hunt, right? A Badhaka is not a verdict about you or anybody. It describes a pressure field, usually inherited by your ancestors, so it's karmic. And the entire point of the diagnosis is that it comes with a remedy attached. In my tradition, nothing is diagnosed that cannot be treated. So you need 3 things. First, your ascendant, and then you need to find out in which house your natal Rahu sits. And then one table that we can look at. If you do not have your chart, pause here, go to prokerala.com or to any other software or tool that you trust, where you can get a Vedic chart. enter your birth data and come back. It takes a couple of minutes. Be careful that you get the mean nodes for Rahu and Ketu. That is important. Only the mean nodes are usable for personal charts. The so-called true nodes are more relevant for mundane astrology, but not for your personal chart. And unfortunately, some of the free chart generators give you the wrong set of nodes without telling you and without letting you change it. That's why I'm insisting on this point, and that's why I find procalor.com for that reason okay. So first, when you have your chart, you need to find your Badhaka house. There's a mechanical rule, and I made a little table about that too. So, if your ascendant is a movable sign, that is Aries, Cancer, Libra or Capricorn, then your Badhaka house is the 11th house in your chart. Always read from the ascendant, obviously. If your ascendant is a fixed sign, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, the Badhaka house, your obstacle house, is the 9th house of your chart. And if your ascendant is a dual or mutable sign, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, it's the 7th house. And always the lord or the lords of that house are your Badhakesh, your obstacle planets. So as you can see here, Aries, for example, the 11th house is Aquarius. You have two obstacle planets, Rahu and Saturn, because they both own Aquarius. If you are a Taurus ascendant, the 9th house is your Badhaka house. And the 9th house for Taurus ascendant is Capricorn. So the lord of Capricorn, Saturn, is your obstacle planet. These are important information for that. And now we're going to do 3 checks, and I'm going to use my own chart for that. So this is my chart, and you can see the middle top, AS is my ascendant. The little number at the bottom of that box is 11. 11 is Aquarius. It's the 11th sign of the zodiac. I'm ascendant Aquarius. So if you go back to the screen here, for Aquarius ascendant, here the 9th house is my obstacle house. For me it's Libra, so Venus is my obstacle planet. Yeah, so you can see here I already marked the 9th house in red. That is Libra. That's my obstacle house. And my Venus, VE, she sits in my 7th house in Leo. Actually, she sits in Maga. Ketu is crossing her right now. So this is my obstacle planet and my obstacle house. Anyways, so the first check is Rahu sitting in your Badhaka house? That alone would be a Sarpa Badhaka. My Rahu sits in the 8th house, in the 10th house, number 8 is Scorpio, so he's not sitting in my obstacle house. That's not a Sarpa Badhaka. Check 2, is Rahu sitting together with your Badhakesh, so with your obstacle planet, while placed in a Kendra or a Dushtana house. Kendra are the angular houses 1, 4, 7, 10. Dushtana are the negative houses 6, 8 and 12. My Rahu sits alone in the 10th house. My Badhakesh is in the 7th house. Doesn't apply for me. That would be Sarpa Badhaka by association. But association is not just conjunction. It also means planetary and house aspects. Graha and Bhava Drishti, or yogas like a mutual exchange, a Parivartana. So it can go quite deep. Check 3. And that one surprises people. Ask yourself, is your Jupiter in the 6th, 8th or 12th house? My Jupiter sits in the 2nd house. But if you have Jupiter in the 6th, 8th and 12th house, well, then ask yourself a second question. Is Jupiter actually your Badhakesh? Is Jupiter your obstacle planet? Which is the case if you are ascendant Gemini or ascendant Virgo. And if that's the case, or if it's standing with your Badhakesh, then you have also a Sarpa Badhaka. Jupiter is Jiva, the living world, and Jupiter buried in a house of loss ties the obstruction to living beings, to serpents. And one marker on top, if your sun, your moon, or the indicator of your ancestors, your Pitri-Karaka, is tied into the combination by conjunction, by parivartana, or by aspects, the tradition reads the harm as coming from your lineage. It's not your act, it's your inheritance. There are more factors, and we cannot go into every one of them. For the advanced people among you, there are two refinements. The texts also weigh Gulika. Gulika is one of the sons of Saturn. If Rahu is conjunct your Gulika, or sitting in the 5th, 7th, or 9th house from your Gulika, that also counts, and you will need software that calculates your Gulika for that. In my chart, you can see a little GK up top in my 11th house. That's my Gulika. It sits in Sagittarius in the 11th house. For me, it doesn't apply. He's 2 houses away from Rahu. Yeah. And there's also a famous rule that if the Badakesh is standing in the 12th house, then all the obstructions will dissolve, because the 12th house is the house of dissolving things. It has one exception. Not when Rahu is involved in any shape or form, because the serpent does not dissolve in the house of loss. Now, if you have a headache, make a pause, take an aspirin pill. You don't need to understand all of that. This is for people who know to read charts. Now, here's the part that moves me every time. The texts do not stop at whether you have a Sarpa Badhaka or not. They actually tell you what was done by your ancestors. If Rahu is in a movable sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, they say the destruction was the destruction of serpent eggs. Could also mean life, children. If Rahu is in a fixed sign, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, there has been deforestation or destruction of a habitat of Earth happening. Rahu in a dual sign, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, the killing of young serpents according to the text, so you could say young life. And further, if Mars stands in a Kendra 1, 4, 7, 10 from Rahu, it happened violently, for example by fire. If Saturn or the Gulika are in a Kendra in an angular house from Rahu, it happened by poison, by pollution, by the slow poisoning of the serpent's home, symbolically standing for pollution of nature. So if you listen to that list again, tell me, is this really about snakes? So the tradition adds one more thing. When this combination stands in a chart, it is the descendants who feel it. Meaning the person watching this video and finding it in their chart, you are the one who can clean it. It's karmic work. That is the essence of ancestral karma and of the importance of transgenerational cleanup work. In the West, we have one big disadvantage. We don't have any traditional transgenerational systems anymore. They have been cleaned out of our culture when we became the colonizers. In India, in other parts of the world, especially that are still connected to their native culture and religion, that exists. The only thing I can think of in our modern Western world is transgenerational work, is basically family constellations. Now, you have found nothing. Your chart is clear. No Badhaka. Well, the Badhaka, the Sarpa Badhaka, is only one of the doors serpent can influence you. Another door would be the 2 stars of the corridor. So if your sun, your moon, your ascendant, or another key point stands in Ashlesha, then the eclipse that opened this fortnight was addressed to you. And if any of them stands in Shatabishak in Aquarius, then the one that closes it on the 28th also. There is then some influence on you. Another door, your karmic axis itself, Rahu and Ketu. When Rahu and Ketu stand exalted or debilitated in your chart, and the tradition accepts 2 different scenarios. Taurus Scorpio is one school, Gemini, Sagittarius is another school. And the teaching says that it points more at that a Kundalini already steered, was awoken in a former incarnation. Tantric work that was started but never finished, or started in an unpure way. So the serpent power in people with an exalted or debilitated karmic axis is awake and not asleep anymore. And here we speak not of one of the Naga kings, we speak of the serpent inside every single one of us, the Kundalini. And a serpent inside the bamboo that is our spinal tube can only do two things, go up or go down. So if you are on a spiritual path and it's actually walked and it's part of your life, it tends to rise. If not, the same voltage tends to discharge downwards. And the two axes have different flavors here. If your Rahu Ketu are on the Taurus Scorpio axis, this tends towards embodiment and its traps, addiction among them. And when we're talking about the Gemini Sagittarius axis, it plays out more in the realm of belief and knowledge. And then there's a fourth door. If Rahu is your Atma Karaka, so in the Gemini system I use, if Rahu holds the highest degree in your chart, it becomes your soul significator, your Atma Karaka. So the serpent is not one theme among many, it is the curriculum of your life. And I will let you in on something. I pass none of the traditional classical Badhaka checks myself. So according to the books, I don't have a Sarpa Badhaka. I don't have to care about serpents. Well, I also have no planets in Ashlesha. But my nodal axis stands debilitated across my chart. I have Ketu in Taurus and Rahu in Scorpio. And Rahu is my Atma Karaka, my soul planet, in my 10th house of the karma that unfolds in my incarnation and of my career. Well, and for this eclipse season and Naga Panchami, even though I pass none of the three checks and have no Sarpa Badhaka, during the lunar eclipse, the moon on the 28th will be eclipsed in Shatabhishak, which is the nakshatra of my ascendant. And the sun that morning stands in Maga, which is the nakshatra of my Venus. So the serpent found another door, it usually does. So, yeah. And if I reflect back on my life, I can concur and confirm that this has always been a theme in my life. Already at the age of 6 or 7, and this was long before I read fantasy, I dreamt that when I grew up, I want to be a wizard riding on a dragon. And something a bit more personal, my parents tell me that when I was really small, like 3 years old, they were worried because I showed clear interest in women in a way that children at that age shouldn't show. Female guests of my parents can confirm that I was smitten and attracted to them. It was basically an unhealthy interest for a child to have in such things. And my parents didn't know what to do, and the doctors kind of shrugged it off at something odd they couldn't really explain. But I was obsessed with women, and it also went into the spiritual world. I was raised in a Christian faith, but already at the age of 8, I started to doubt what the priests in my mother's church told us each Sunday. So I was certain that the invisible world would be better visited as a mage and not as a believer. So there was a clear signs that I was not normal. And at the age of 12, I did my first live visualization without even knowing what that is. For years, I was obsessed with Ireland. For some reason I cannot describe, I had the urge of reading every book, watching every TV documentary that I came across that had to do with Ireland. I saw myself vividly living on a stormy cliff in Ireland, in a house with an open fire, surrounded by my books, my cats, an armchair, and even whiskey. I didn't drink at that age, I just read in the books about it. And many years later, when I had forgotten about that phase, it all became true. Every single detail. My life on the Hill of Hoth was exact the realization of my childhood dream, with one substantial difference. In my dreams, I had was a successful author. In reality, I was just working at Google. I was a wage slave. So to this day, writing books like fiction, fantasy books is a unfulfilled desire that I carry. And then I turn towards Jyotish and I start to make these videos. And I realize I'm already doing it. I'm just not doing it in the old-fashioned way that I always thought that I should do it. So, yeah. I make one of these weather reports now for every major configuration. I have one ask of you. If you enjoy these videos, the next one will be about the lunar eclipse. Subscribe to my channel so you stay tuned. Now, remedy time. Our friend is back with the remedies. But this time, it's less about a pharmacist. It's about what you actually do. What can you do now on Naga Panchami? Well, you can do what all people across India will do that day. On Monday the 17th, you feed the serpents. You can do it at home. It costs almost nothing. And this year, of all years, it falls inside the eclipse corridor that started and ends with the serpent. So this is the strongest week of the year for that particular repair work. The Nagas love what is pure. So on that day, you take an early bath, you clean yourself, but you do not put any makeup on. No perfume, no deodorants. If you had to put it on early in the day, you wash it away before the ceremony. The Nagas are very peculiar about this point. Then you take equal parts of raw milk, raw organic milk, and pure water, spring or mineral. If you can't get your hand on really good raw milk, just take the water. Don't substitute the milk. And then you recite the serpent mantra at least 28 times. 108 times if you can. Om Sarpebhyo Namah. Om Sarpebhyo Namah. Om Sarpebhyo Namah. And then you can also add the Mrityunjaya mantra, the great death-conquering mantra of Shiva. Same counts, at least 27 times. If you can do it 108 times, great. You speak them over your bowl of water. And then, and I love this detail, you blow over the mixture. You give your breath with the mantra's charge in it into the offering. You visualize it, how the energy that has built up all inside and around you flows with the divine air that is your breath into the water and sanctifies it. You can make your own holy water. And then you respectfully carry the bowl of water to the nearest living water, a river, a stream, a pond, the sea, and you pour it out there, gifting it to your local Nagas, thanking them for their protection and asking them for forgiveness of acts of pollution conducted by you or by your ancestors. And you visualize how your offering cleans the nature and their habitat. And that's the whole rite. Milk, water, 2 mantras, your breath, and a body of water. And if you want the court on your side by name, this is also the day the tradition recites the 9. So you can also add, if you want, you can add the mantra of the 9 Naga kings. So you can add the Naga Stotram also. Have it here. Whoever holds these 9 names, the worst promises, has no fear of poison. So if those Naga kings were strangers to you a short while ago, now they should become familiar guests. If you found a Sarpa Badhaka earlier in your chart, the classical texts add flavors. Where the serpents were harmed by deforestation, the remedy of our time is supporting reforestation. And where eggs and young life was destroyed, supporting those who protect breeding grounds of snakes, of birds, of any young life is the remedy. And there is one instruction in the Prajna Marga that I cannot leave out. The benefic serpents accept offerings, but the malefic ones, the text says, are appeased only by song and dance. So if you stand at the river on Sunday and feel ridiculous, sing something. You have textual authority. And do it as an ancestor as much as a descendant. One counsel given for this eclipse season is to be open, and to open it with an apology on behalf of one's whole line for what was done to nature and its beings by people whose names we carry and people whose names we have forgotten. Remember the Astika story. The ancestors and the serpents were saved by the same act. And Ketu right now is standing in the star of the ancestors while you pour. I will be doing this in Paris. The line of my ancestors and of our ancestors is listening. The door is open. You are not alone. And you do not need a priest to do all of this. That is what it means to be a conscious human. You have the power and the authority. Every man and every woman is a star. Un mot en français, pour une fois. Si le Jyotish vous parle et que vous parlez français, l'association francophone de Jyotish, dont je suis un membre, est née cette année. Nous préparons des consultations caritatives gratuites et la première conférence francophone de Jyotish en 2027. L'adhésion de membres fondateurs est de 25 € pour cette année. Et cette fenêtre de fondation ne restera pas ouverte éternellement. Le lien est ici sur l'écran et dans la description de mon vidéo. Rejoignez-nous, on construit quelque chose de unique. Merci. So one more thing about Naga Panchami, the 17th of August. The same day, India feeds the Nagas and the serpents. The sun enters Leo, Simha Sankranti. Days after being swallowed in the serpent star, the sun walks into its own house and puts the crown back on. The calendar is telling a complete story. The light is taken, the serpent is fed, the light is restored, stronger, sovereign, home. And that is what a remedy is all about. Not a superstition, a choreography for getting the light back. On the day of the eclipse, Jupiter was exalted in Cancer at 15 degrees in Pushya Nakshatra. By the 28th of August, Jupiter will stand at 18 degrees in Ashlesha Nakshatra, which means he crosses that boundary on the 18th of August, one day after Naga Panchami. The day after the serpents are fed, the great guru of the sky walks into the serpent's own star and stays there for the rest of the season. What an entry! And then the corridor closes again on the 28th of August in Varuna's waters, and that is the next episode, part 3 of my Snakes and Shadow series of planetary weather, the lunar eclipse. See you there, and until then, feed something that is way older than you. Namaste. Bye.